Hi everybody, this is Jackie from Jack Gets Lost Down a Book Hole, and it is Top by Wednesday time. And this week's topic is books without romance or only a little bit of romance. And unfortunately, all the books that I have here that I've listed here are books that have at least a tiny bit of romance, but it's more like there's either married couples or it's just not central. But humans have romantic relationships. Um, Okay, so first book I have here is I no longer have this book. It was a library book I got a couple weeks ago, and that is Murder on the Orient Express. This is an Agatha Christie book, and it's one of her more known books. And it features her famous detective Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. I can't say his first name. And these people he's on this train, the famous Orient Express train, which I think still is I think I heard that it's still in existence. It's this famous train that travels all over Europe, and the train gets stuck during a snowstorm, and then at the time, this man gets murdered while on the train. And unfortunately, he himself actually committed a crime. So all the people on the train are like, this guy deserved to die. Who cares? But the witnesses do help him solve the case, and it's basically about that. There's married couples on there, but it's mostly about her Belgian detective solving this case and finding who done it, basically. So there's really no focus of romance. The focus of the plot is the mystery and who killed this guy, and that's basically it. So, and then let's see, what else did I? And then you have another book that I no longer have that I actually donated to the bookshop in my town, and that is Red Rain by R.L. Stine. Unfortunately, oh wait, I forgot to mention I gave Murder on the Orient Express, I believe, 4 stars, maybe 5. But Red Rain, it's a horror novel about one of his R.L. Stine's first adult horror novel, I believe, and this woman that writes a travel blog, she goes to this small town, seaside town. I want to say it's in the Carolinas, I think, because I think I remember, being like, oh, I live there, I live there, or no, it might have been in South Carolina, and I don't actually live in South Carolina, but I have family there. And there's this while she's visiting and exploring the town, there's a hurricane, and during the aftermath of the hurricane, she meets these 2 mysterious boys that are walking through a curtain of blood rain, or at least it looks like blood. It's Red Rain, hence the title. And there are these 2 British boys who are really creepy, and are basically, their parents die. They say that their parents died during the hurricane, and she decides to take them home, and immediately decides to adopt them because they're so cute and sweet, and she feels so sorry for them. And she takes them home with her, but the problem is her husband is not too thrilled at the idea, and the kids are weirded out by these 2 little boys at first because they're so creepy and actually, the fact that they're super, super, a little too polite. And then all these, strange things start happening. The kids get really greedy and want more and more attention from their mom, and want more things from their new mom, and want more things from her, and she lets them walk all over and take advantage, and her husband gets a little suspicious and weirded out by this. He doesn't like it, and so he and his wife are having problems, and as a subplot, he sort of starts to have an affair with his young secretary. Of course, one of the things that bothered me, that I agree doesn't make sense, is that the wife never found out about that. Although but anyway, and then the little boys, you start to find out that these little boys, there's something wrong with them, and they're a little evil. Like they use hypnosis and burn themselves into the brains of the children and other people in and the other and all the children in the town, and they slowly start to like take over, and because the father doesn't trust the little boys, they start to like slowly try to ruin his life, essentially. It's kind of creepy, but it's also the problem with it, it's very cheesy, and it reads so much. It reads, even though it's about adults and it has some foul language in it, like the F word. It's just not as it reads too much like one of his children's books, or like his middle school level books. It doesn't read like an adult horror. It's not like a Stephen King horror. So unfortunately, I was a little disappointed in it. I gave it 3 stars. I mean, I might have been a little too lenient on it, but like I said, it doesn't really have any romance in it. I mean, it has the husband and wife, but that's if you're dealing with people, you might have like husband and wife relationships in a story, but it's very little, and mostly focuses on these creepy kids and how they're trying to take over and rule the school. That's literally what they keep saying, is they want to rule the school, and everyone thinks it's so cute. It's just plain annoying. But of course, they're also burning themselves into the brains of people so that they basically brainwash these people to trust them and fall in love with them and all that. And it's just, so it was okay. It was kind of disappointing, but it has very little romance, and you might be even entertained by it. I mean, I definitely think Murder on the Orient Express is a little more entertaining than that one. Okay, so then I have a classic, the game, or not a classic, one that everybody knows about, because you've seen the show, or you've read the books, or you've done both. I am trying to do both, and that is A Game of Thrones, the actual name of the series is A Song of Ice and Fire, the actual series, but the first book is called A Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. And of course, I'm sure I gave this one 5 stars. I don't remember. But in case you haven't watched the show or seen or read the books, or it's basically about all these competing, like it's a medieval kind of setting, and all these people are competing for this Iron Throne, and which is basically a chair with the back, where the back of the chair is made out of swords, and so. And to me, it looks like the most uncomfortable chair on the planet. And I don't know why anyone would want to sit in that chair, sit on that throne. I mean, they need to put a cushion on that throne. Of course, the original makers of the throne, the Targaryen, I can't remember his first name. He made it that way, and I think they say at some point I either on that YouTube video I watched where it talked about the history of Westeros, the world, or I read it or it was said in one of the books, but that the original Targaryen king that originally owned the throne was like he said something that a king should not be comfortable on his throne. It makes you weak. Which, I mean, maybe that's true, because that throne makes people really cranky. Okay, so this series does have a little bits and pieces of romance, but none of the relationships really last. Like, sometimes people will die, or like it's a forced and arranged marriage and people are not happy with it. Mostly it's people, the one person in the relationship ends up dying. So and then there's like an incest relationship between in this, and so it's the romance kind of like almost, it's there. I mean, there's really no romance. I mean, there's like a glimmer of it throughout, glimmers and bits and pieces of it, but they never last. They always fall apart, Not, and so it's so I think this is definitely a good series to read if you want something gritty and you like medieval inspired settings, but it's not like too, and but as you can see, they're very long books. So but it's still, I think it's good. I enjoy it, and I'm one of those people who likes romance, but I understand why people are getting tired of romance in their books. Because especially, and you see it all the time in YA books. But I'm definitely like, it's funny, all the people on BookTube, after a lot of people on BookTube get tired of the romance in novels, but I have a best friend who's like a huge romance novel, a fan of romance in her novels. She loves romance novels, and I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I like a little bit of romance, and sometimes I will still occasionally read a romance novel. Like, I just read Joanna Lindsey's Joining, which is a love story, kind of like a Taming of the Shrew type story. And I enjoyed that one. I thought that was fun, but I don't read it regularly, and I think that's partly because I went through a Nicholas Sparks phase, and I just got, after a while, Nicholas Sparks got really repetitive, or at least I feel like he did. His books are all kind of similar. Maybe the details are different, but I just got kind of bored. So and because the romance is like, it's, I mean, it can be exciting, but I think it's more exciting when it's not central to the story, because if you have a romance, it's going to be soap opera drama. I mean, not exactly soap opera, but it's going to have lots of drama, and that's going to get really old really fast, and like you end up getting to the point, and especially if there's a love triangle in the story, then it's like you like this guy or you like this guy, and it gets really ugly really fast. So, I mean, I like romance. I have no problem with it, but I mean, I enjoy it, but I just, after a while, I can understand it's a breath of fresh air, and there's sometimes I almost will hesitate about reading a book if it doesn't have romance in there at all. Like, I hesitated with A Savage Song, which I still haven't read, but now but at first I wasn't sure if I was interested in it because it didn't have romance, because I do like romance in my plots. I do like having it in there. But then I'm deciding, I keep hearing about it, and I've decided I'm gonna get it at some point. I don't know when. Although I might get it before this November, because if I go to Y'all Fest in November, if I'm able to go, then I might get to meet V.E. Schwab. And so, and get her to sign some of my books. So I might end up having to get it and get into it just because so I can, I'm sure I'll still enjoy it. But anyway, okay, so I better stop before this video gets too long. Okay, so next you have here another book that still has a little bit of romance, but that's not the main plot, and that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the first book in a trilogy. The third book still has not come out, and no one has heard anything about the third book, but there are currently 2 books out. And this is basically about this guy, like, he's basically telling this chronicler about his life, because his life is he's so famous in the world. He's been, and there's so many stories and rumors about him that finally, the chronicle gets it from the horse's mouth, basically. Is, and just be warned, the guy's he exaggerates and makes himself look good at times, so he's a bit of an unreliable narrator, and I think that's why I've heard that's why people do not like the main character, Quoth. But I like him. I think I like the character, but like I said, and there is a little bit of romance, like, Quoth has a crush on this one girl that he's run into a couple times throughout the story, throughout this first book, and he still, fantasizes about her and talks about how perfect she is. But I mean, they're not together, and there might be romance, more prominent romance in the second book, but the romance is only a small portion of the book. It's not central. So I mean, um, okay. Let's see, how many books did I have? Okay, I said those two. I said two. Murder on Orient Express and Red Rain. That's 4. Okay, so okay, I guess I will talk about. Well, I could talk about List of Cages. I mean, List of Cages, but well, no, even that one has a tiny bit of romance. Because I was gonna say that's the only one that doesn't have any romance at all. But no, actually, that does have a little bit of romance where one of the main characters, one of the main characters gets a girlfriend. So I guess Labyrinth is the closest to no romance at all. That's I don't have that one either. I donated that one as well because I mean I enjoyed that book, but I just don't. I just decide I'm not going to read it again, and I don't want to continue this because it actually has a series, a trilogy. I think it's a trilogy, but it looks like a trilogy that's like a companion kind of trilogy where the novels you can read. It sounded like by the summary that I can read the other one like as a standalone. But I mean that's just going by the summary. But I'm not gonna continue it. But it was still a good book, and I think I gave it like 3 or 4 stars. And that is I gave that one 5 stars. The Name of the Wind. I'm not that hard to please. I will easily give a book, and I know some people say I should be more critical, but I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't find the things that when I read books, the books I've read, I can't find anything beyond 3 stars. I mean, like Red Rain is the closest to a book that I thought was really bad and didn't even deserve 4 stars. But anyway, the Labyrinth, I think that's how you say it. It is basically it's a dystopian, I believe. I believe from what I remember, I believe that's what it was, a dystopian, and they lived on. It was this kind of a sci-fi fantasy type thing where I think when I looked it up to figure out because I think they lived on another planet because I was a little confused if it was dystopian or another a fantasy world or whatever. And I think they were on another planet, and it's a world where you have the world divided, the planet or the world or whatever divided up into singers and dang, I can't remember what they're called. And that's not the actual name, but they're the librarians. I wish I could remember. I'm sure it will pop into my head later after I film this, after I stop filming. But you have the world divided. You have the singers that are basically they're illiterate. They cannot read at all, and they have their own little temple. And then you have these librarians. And they have their own temple where they have this huge library full of hundreds and hundreds of books, and they are literate, and their god or whatever, or he and his friend, he did not. The story, the myth is that he did not teach his friend. He wouldn't teach him how to read, so that's something like that caused them to go their separate ways. They became enemies or something. I'm sorry, I can't remember the story that well. And so you have this one priestess or an assistant to the priestesses who can hear the book. She has an ability to hear what the books say out loud. And there's this whole prophecy that the person that can hear the books will bring, will be the person to take down the library, and she will be able to recite the song and everything, and so the singers, well, I mean, there's this whole special book that they're looking for. There's a special book that they're looking for. So one of the priestesses are the Princess Celine, whose mother, who is like the head of the order of the librarians or whatever. She and her servant and the other girl, the one who can hear the books, go to the burial site where this book is, and they want to get to the book before the singers do, but they are cornered they are captured by the singers. The princess and the one servant escape, but the girl who can hear the books gets captured and taken to the temple where the singers live, and they find out that she can hear the books. So they believe she's the one prophesized, and so she has to read the song. She has to sing the song, recite the song, so that we'll finally take down the library for good. Because the singers see the librarians as the enemies, and vice versa. So she's trying to get out of there and escape, and try to prove to the singers that nothing is wrong with being literate. It's not a bad thing. Books are not a bad thing. The librarians are not bad at all. They're good guys too, just like you are. She's trying to convince them, and she even comes close to, and then there's, so there is a little tiny slither of romance, because there's this boy that likes the girl that can hear the books. He has a bit of a crush on her, but he doesn't want to have a crush on her because she's literate, so it's like he's very confused. So unfortunately there is a tiny slither of romance, but it's a very little. There's like almost none. It almost doesn't even exist, And meanwhile, the princess and the servant girl are talking to the princess's mother, the queen, and be like, we have to rescue our friend here, but then there's this whole war, but then the queen realizes that means there's a war starting between the librarians and the singers. So it's a very interesting plot. I'm sorry that was not the best explanation. I would recommend checking it out for yourself to get a better interpretation, a better explanation of the book. And it was enjoyable read. It's just not something that I was like super into. But it was still enjoyable, and I think you might, and if you like singing and reading, I would still recommend checking it out. You might like it more than I do. So I think that's all fun. I think that's 5. Sorry, I basically wrote down all the books that I feel like they have very little romance, or only, if not any. I just wrote a whole bunch of list of books, so I had to basically decide which of these I would talk about. And like I totally forgot. I forgot it was 4th of July for today. Like my friend reminded me yesterday that today was the 4th. Although it might have been no, because it was at 11. Because I wanted to. Reminded me. So she reminded me yesterday. Yesterday today would be the 4th. So I kind of forgot that it was 4th of July today. And then of course we went to go see fireworks, and I totally forgot that today was Tuesday and tomorrow was Top 5 Wednesday. So I would need to film this. Okay, so anyway, I will post the link to the Goodreads group. Top 5 Wednesday is hosted by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. Originally was created by Ginger Reed Slaney. I definitely recommend checking out both those two people. They make really good videos. So I will post the Goodreads link. And if you are interested in doing this. Alright. Thank you.